Every time before it gets dark, the man sprays alcohol on the door of his house. As soon as he returns home, the first thing he does is clean his dog. The moment he realizes the sun is about to set, he quickly seals the doors and windows with special steel plates. But even with not a single light on inside the house, he still doesn't feel safe. Holding his rifle tightly to his chest, he curls up in the bathtub with his dog. Only then does he feel a sense of relief. In fact, the man has taken such extreme security measures because once night falls, the outside world no longer belongs to humans. Terrifying hordes of zombies roam the streets, spreading terror everywhere. About 5 years ago, in 2012, a virus music caused total devastation. It killed 90% of humanity, while 9% of the survivors turned into zombies. These zombies fear sunlight, only come out at night, and have an incredibly sharp sense of smell. The main character of our story, Will, is one of the few who survived this virus, among less than 1% of the world's population. He has a strong antibody. Driving his Ford Mustang, Will races through the deserted streets of New York. In the middle of the city, he chases a deer. In a world where he is now completely alone, food has become the most basic and essential need. But just as he is about to make the kill, a lioness suddenly pounces and corners the deer before him. Seeing his prey taken, Will considers shooting the lioness. At that moment, a lion and a cub also appear. Seeing all three of them reminds Will of his dead family. He doesn't pull the trigger, because he knows that lions are maintaining the balance of nature. Before heading out again in search of other survivors, he goes down to his underground medical lab and checks whether the mutant rats have returned to normal after the treatment. But even now, he sees no difference. Actually, Will is a brilliant scientist. He has developed a gene therapy based on a virus vaccine. When he felt that this day would turn out disappointing as well, he noticed that a mutant rat no longer had the strength to attack. From this, he realized that the rat was slowly returning to normal. If this experiment on the rat proved successful, it could turn the zombies back into normal humans as well. During the daytime, Will leaves his house every morning at exactly 8 a.m. to search for the locations of survivors and zombies. Every day, he drives to a video store, changes the sign, and checks in on the mannequins he has already set up, talking to them as if they were friends. Seeing this, one can hardly imagine how lonely a person must be to turn mannequins into companions. He marks every place he visits on a map and collects food and essential supplies from those locations. In search of other survivors, he makes a radio call every day at exactly 12 noon, and with hope for a miracle, he drives to the dock. But 3 whole years pass, and he never receives a response. To ease his loneliness, Will goes in the afternoon to an aircraft carrier and plays golf while standing on top of a jet. During this time, his dog notices something strange. There is movement somewhere in the distance. Will immediately picks up his rifle, looks through the scope, and realizes it is a deer. Without hesitation, he heads out to hunt, taking his dog with him. But then something goes wrong. While running around, the deer accidentally gets trapped in a confined area and, in panic, runs into a building. The dog, who hadn't had meat in a long time, fearlessly follows it inside. Will tries to stop him, but he panics and is forced to go inside for his dog's sake. Inside, it is completely dark. Nothing is visible. Even though the video brightness has been turned all the way up, the atmosphere feels even more terrifying and horrifying. At this moment, Will's heart is pounding with fear, so much so that even a mirror could frighten him. As he goes upstairs searching for his dog, he suddenly hears a painful scream. Afraid that something terrible may have happened to his dog, he moves forward while trying to reassure himself. Following the bloodstains on the stairs, he turns a corner and sees the severed head of an animal. Thankfully, as he moves ahead, he realizes it is a moose that has just been killed. But the fear on Moose's face before dying was clearly visible. Seeing this, Bill raised his gun and started looking around. That's when he saw another terrifying sight. Within moments, a horde of zombies was less than 5 meters away from him. Will had to gather his courage and go inside for his dog. Finally, he found his German Shepherd under a table, looking extremely terrified. Just as he stepped forward to call out to the dog's eyes suddenly fixed on something right behind Will's back. Will sensed that something was wrong. As soon as he turned around, a horrifying scene appeared before him. Will grabbed his dog and ran toward the exit like a madman. But in the end, they were caught by the zombies. The only good thing was that Bill jumped out through a dark window just in time, and the moment sunlight fell on the zombie, it immediately collapsed to the ground, badly injured. The recent experience may have shaken Will, but it also helped him find a shelter. To experiment on the zombies, Will set up a trap outside. He took out a vial of his own blood and placed it at the building's entrance while he himself hid outside. In just 2 minutes and 30 seconds, a zombie was caught in the trap. As soon as the trap activated, a living zombie was forcibly dragged outside. But suddenly, with an angry roar, a terrifying faced zombie burst out, as if it wanted to devour Will alive right away. Even Will couldn't understand why this zombie was so furious. After returning home, Will became completely focused on experimenting on the zombies. He had no idea that the female zombie he had just captured was actually the wife of the zombie king. Because Will captured her, a full-scale war between zombies and humans finally broke out. He believed he was the only human left alive in the city, but he was shocked when he saw a mannequin's head suddenly move. Even more frightening was the fact that this mannequin, which should have been standing at the entrance of the video store, had somehow appeared several kilometers away. No one could understand how it got there. Just then, Bill pulled out his gun and aimed it at the mannequin, thinking that some human had placed it there to communicate with him. But he saw no one around, because in reality, it was a trap laid by the Zombie King for revenge, since Will had captured his wife. When Will approaches the mannequin and bends down to look at the water lying beneath it, suddenly, the trap set by the Zombie King is activated, and Bill is left hanging in midair. Because of the head injury Will suffered, he loses consciousness. As the sun is about to set, Bill wakes up to the sound of his alarm clock. As soon as the sunlight fades, terrifying zombies come out. Bill quickly pulls a knife from his waist and, in panic, cuts the rope tied around his legs. But the moment he hits the ground, the knife plunges straight into his thigh, making things even worse. Because the sun's final rays are disappearing fast. The very next moment, Will senses something is wrong. Horrifying sounds begin echoing from the dark building ahead. Then the Zombie King appears and releases 3 vicious hunting dogs. Because of the remaining rays of sunlight, they can't reach him at first. But a few minutes later, as the sun finally sets, the zombie hunting dogs go berserk and launch a savage attack. At this moment, our main character's life hangs by a thread. The only ray of hope between life and death is his German Shepherd, who has stayed by his side through this apocalypse. That German Shepherd is his only companion. The reason he's still alive. He's terrified that his dog might die. There was a pistol in the car. Will begins crawling toward it. But as the last rays of sunlight vanish, the attack of the hunting dogs grows more intense. He's running out of time. Enduring the pain, he forces himself up and moves forward on all fours. After a few steps, he collapses again. At that very moment, the ferocious zombie dogs pounce on him. Will manages to hold them back with gunfire. But then another zombie dog lunges at him. In an instant, the beast's sharp fangs are about to tear into his cheek, when the German Shepherd jumps in just in time and saves him. But the worst was yet to come. During the recent fight, the German Shepherd had been bitten by the other dog. Will's heart sank, because only Will had the antibodies, not the German Shepherd. After returning home, Will immediately injected him with an antiviral shot. He picked him up in his arms and began to hope that the German Shepherd would survive. Smiling through the pain, he kept reassuring himself that his beloved companion would be fine. Then the dog's fur began to fall off. When Will lifted his eyelids, he saw clear signs of the disease forming at the corners of his eyes, and deadly symptoms were starting to appear in his mouth as well. Will was shattered, but reality forced him to make a painful decision. Unwillingly, with his own strong hands, Will strangled the one he loved, the companion who had stayed by his side through countless lonely, dark nights. He was completely broken. But at the same time, Will discovered something strange. When humans are infected by the virus and turn into zombies, they don't have enough intelligence. So how were they able to set traps exactly like humans? Just then, he looked at the seat beside him, and Sam was nowhere to be seen. At that moment, Will could no longer endure the pain. That very night, he jumped into his car and sped straight toward the harbor. Without thinking, he launched an attack on the zombies. Since he was inside the car, the zombies couldn't harm him at first, but they just kept coming. They surrounded the car completely and began smashing the windows. Some of the zombies climbed up onto a lamppost and knocked it straight down onto the car. trapping Will inside. As he saw the crowd closing in, he desperately tried to escape the vehicle. But more zombies arrived. Then the zombie leader ordered the attack. Before Will could react, the impact flipped the car onto its side, and the monster appeared right in front of him. Will was now like a deer caught in a trap. Death was creeping closer with every second. Just then, a bright light appeared, as if someone was coming toward him. Unable to take it anymore, Will finally lost consciousness. When he woke up, he found himself lying in his own home, with the injury on his leg carefully bandaged. He saw that there was a woman with a child nearby. It had been 3 years since Will had last seen another human being. He didn't even know how to talk to people anymore. Then the woman began introducing herself. Anna told Will that she had heard about him on the radio. She had come to New York with the child and waited the entire day. But Will never showed up. She was thinking of going to Vermont because it was considered a safe place for humans. Hearing this, anger flashed across Will's face. He told Anna that there was no safe place anywhere anymore. All of America had been destroyed. Anna tried to argue with Will, but he suddenly started yelling at them. He had always believed that he was the only person left alive on Earth, which put him under extreme mental pressure. In his despair, Will had completely relied on science and logic, and focused all his energy on finding a cure for the virus. His entire life and all his hopes were tied to this single goal. But Anna's words suddenly changed his thinking completely. She told him that there were other survivors out there. This meant that Will's long years of loneliness and hard work might not have been in vain, because now a living human being was standing right in front of him. Will stayed alone in his room for a long time, struggling with his thoughts and emotions. Eventually, he accepted the reality and came out of the room. Anna tried to convince Will to go with them to the quarantine zone, but Will clearly refused. He said he would not leave this place under any circumstances. After that, Anna entered Will's lab. When she saw the female zombie lying in the ice, she couldn't believe her eyes and asked Will if he could really cure her. Then Anna noticed hundreds of photographs of zombies on the wall. Will had been using them like lab rats to develop a vaccine. As the sunlight began to fade, Will immediately shut all the doors and windows. Once again, Anna tried to persuade Will to go to the quarantine zone. But before Will could give any answer, he suddenly heard loud commotion coming from outside. When he opened the small window and looked, he saw a massive crowd of zombies moving toward his house. Will couldn't believe the sight in front of his eyes. He had always tried his best to hide his scent. Yet the zombies had still managed to locate his hideout. Like wild monsters, they began charging crazily toward his place. When Will thought carefully, he realized that when the woman had saved him the day before, she had brought him home safely. But afterward, she hadn't taken any precautions. However, there was no time to blame her now. Will immediately turned on all the powerful lights around the area. But surprisingly, the zombies, who were usually afraid of light, had become unusually clever this time. After destroying all the street lights, they started rushing straight toward him. A terrified Will quickly activated his second line of defense and triggered all the bombs around the area at once. When he looked again, he saw that all the zombies had been killed in the explosions. But as soon as he called out for Anna, there was no response. He immediately went upstairs to look for her. At that very moment, a zombie attacked him. It grabbed him tightly, lifted him straight off the ground, and slammed him onto a table. Helpless, Will was brutally assaulted. Just as the zombie thought Will was dead, it didn't realize that Will had been pretending. Seizing the opportunity, Will grabbed a screwdriver and stabbed the zombie. But the attack didn't harm it at all. The zombie picked him up and threw him down again. Now, as the enraged zombie king snarled at him, Will quickly grabbed a nearby rifle. But the zombie ran off, as if it knew how dangerous human weapons could be. Will aimed in all directions, but the zombie hid behind a wall. So Will immediately fired at a gas cylinder. The explosion blasted the zombie straight outside, but even then, it wasn't seriously injured. After that, it climbed up the stairs and disappeared. When Will chased after it, he realized the zombie had jumped out through a window and escaped. Will rushed back inside to find the woman. But he saw another zombie in the room, while the woman and the child were hiding under a cupboard in terror. Will signaled them to stay absolutely silent. He prepared to take out the zombie with his pistol. But just then, the zombies spotted them. To keep both of them from getting hurt, Will had no choice but to gather his courage and go inside. He immediately opened fire on them. Suddenly, a loud noise was heard from outside. When Will opened the door, the Zombie King was roaring right at him. In fact, he had gone out to call in more zombies. What was even more terrifying was that now their attack wasn't just random destruction anymore. It was carefully planned. When Will saw the zombie leader outside the window, a deep sense of unease washed over him, because the zombies no longer seemed like mindless beasts. They clearly had intelligence. All three of them quickly ran down to the basement. Will tightly shut the main door, and Anna hid inside the lab with the child. Just then, she witnessed something miraculous and immediately called out to Will. The vaccine that Will had created was finally working. The Zombie King's wife was slowly turning back into a human. But at that very moment, the zombies broke in. Will quickly shut the glass door. He wanted to tell the zombies that he could turn all of them back into humans. But in their eyes, Will himself was nothing less than a terrifying zombie. Not only had he been capturing their kind and experimenting on them for a long time, but this time he had even abducted the Zombie King's wife. This made the entire zombie army boil with rage. As the Zombie King kept slamming into the glass door, it began to crack and slowly break apart. At that moment, Will realized his situation. As he looked around frantically, his eyes fell on the butterfly-shaped mark on the woman's neck. The moment he saw the butterfly, it felt as if everything suddenly made sense to him. He quickly grabbed a container and extracted serum from the Zombie King's wife, because her blood worked like a vaccine. It could create antibodies. After collecting the serum, he sent the woman and the child through a safe underground passage. Once he handed the serum to the woman, he sealed the gate behind them. Just then, the Zombie King shattered the glass. At that exact moment, Will pulled the pin from a grenade and charged straight into the horde of zombies. And that's where this incredible movie comes to an end. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section. Also subscribe to this channel for more stories like this.